arguably the most famous senator in Washington, D.C. Here is Senator John McCAIN, ladies and gentlemen, joining us from the belly of the beast today. Man, John, you did not look happy last night, and neither was I. And congratulations for conveying that to the national television audience.
Well, I thank you, my friend. It was a remarkable experience. Sometimes almost entertaining. You know, when the president says we're going to have a spending freeze, and that's, by the way, translates into $15 billion reduction in spending in 2011.
Wow. And
then immediately pivots to, but we need a jobs bill, i.e. stimulus. That's somewhere between $80 and $115 billion this year. And then, of course, we'll take care of the earmark pork barreling by moving them to a web page. That ought to take care of the problem. I mean, look, I respect the president. I think he gives a good speech. And then, do you remember the part where he said, he chastised the Republican leadership, and he said, if anybody's got an idea, I'm open. In case you missed it, Mr. President, we've been on the floor of the Senate day after day, week after week, night after night, even on weekends, saying, let's have medical malpractice reform. Let's go across state lines to get insurance policies that people want. Let's let people small businesses join together and bargain with health insurance companies. Let's reward wellness and fitness. We've had a long agenda of addressing the problem with healthcare in America, and that's the cost, and not have a massive government takeover of the healthcare system in America. So I'm sorry he's missed C-SPAN, although I guess he's missed C-SPAN because C-SPAN was supposed to be in the room. And then, we don't want any backroom deals. Do you remember when he said that?
I remember that.
Oh, my God. I almost fell out of my chair because what about the deal he just cut for the unions at the expense of other non-union citizens? What about the Cornhusker kickback? What about the Louisiana Purchase? It's been the worst unsavory sausage-making, deal-making that's been going on. Guess where? Behind closed doors in the White House, and the lobbyists have been over there. They've been droves.
You must have really. I don't know what word I would use here. Be stunned that the president would talk about a spending freeze. You came out. You brought that up 3 times, 3 different debates in the campaign, and 3 times he said no.
Well, what we need to do now is we need to go back to the beginning of last year. They've increased domestic spending by 14% in the last year, okay, which has put us on a plateau, which is far worse than, or in a ditch that's far deeper than there was before. So I'm not only now calling for a spending freeze, but I'm saying let's go back to the beginning of last year before we went on this huge spending spree, which has not benefited the American people. Might have benefited Wall Street, I don't know. But and then let's have not only a spending freeze, but let's have a line item veto. Let's have a budget that is a law enforceable by law. Let's have a mandatory spending cut as far as percentage of gross domestic product. You know that spending is up to 24% of our gross domestic product, highest it's been since World War II. So, look, I thank the president for his proposals for small business. God knows that they need it, and I'm sure there's other things we want to support. But this business of us not sitting down together, they have never, ever sat down with legitimate, bipartisan, equal negotiations across the negotiating table. What they've tried to do, as you know, Barry, is to pick off a Republican or two. That's been their strategy. That's not bipartisanship.
The president got into this thing. He chided Republicans. He looked over in the direction of the Republicans, and he says, well, if it, I'm not quoting exactly here, but he said if it's going to take a 60 votes in the Senate to get business done in this town, that's not leadership. When you heard that, I mean, they were threatening that, 60 votes, Harry Reid running around threatening to do that with the health bill and all that. How did you feel when you heard him say this, chide Republicans over the 60 vote thing?
Well, I thought it was a bit of an Orwellian experience because they had 60 votes for a long time. Now they've dropped down to 59. They've got, what, a 70-some vote advantage in the House of Representatives, and they still can't get legislation through. But also, again, there has never been a major reform enacted in the history of the Congress of the United States unless it was bipartisan. And they came into this last year, understandably, a little bit intoxicated because they had 60 votes in the Senate and an overwhelming majority in the House, and they didn't have to pay any attention not only to Republicans, but to the view that was expressed in Virginia, New Jersey, and in Massachusetts, and that is we are a right-of-center nation, and he is governing from the far left, and the American people are rejecting that, and the majority of Americans do not want this health care reform. They want to stop and start over.
He said it didn't get passed because he didn't explain it well enough to the American people.
He explained it ad nauseum, and they figured it out. He went to town hall meetings all over the country, gave speeches everywhere, and the more Americans got to know it, the more Americans got to oppose it. Maybe he ought to try say nothing, and maybe we can pass.
Hey, let me ask you about the nuclear thing. I did a triple test. I was watching that, and I did a triple take. He said we need nuclear power plants. Now, is he being serious or is this pandering?
You can't be serious if you're for closing Yucca Mountain and opposed to recycling of spent nuclear fuel. You can't get there from here. You've got to expedite the licensing process. You've got to do loan guarantees. But fundamentally, if you don't store the spent nuclear fuel and you don't recycle it, by the way, which they do in Japan, Germany, and France, then you can't get there. Because you have this spent nuclear fuel sitting around everywhere in America, which poses a huge security risk. So the rhetoric now has changed. Also, offshore drilling, wonderful.
Yeah, what was that? What was that about?
When are we going to do it? You see what I mean?
Yeah. So what is it? Is it serious? Is it?
No.
Are they testing the waters? What are they doing?
Look, I'm not challenging anyone's integrity. But how can you be credible about nuclear power and offshore drilling until you propose measures that will make that possible? Let me just give you an example. If I were president, I would have said, I'm offering the state of California 75% of the revenues for offshore drilling, and that'll help them with the huge budget deficit that they have. Schwarzenegger seems to think they'd pass it in a New York minute. You see what I mean? In other words, it's one thing to say these things. It's another thing to put in policies which would implement those proposals. Look, they poll test everything. They see that Americans want nuclear power and they want offshore drilling. So, say it. But his Secretary of Energy was sitting right there in the front row, who testified before the Energy Committee that I'm on, said, we're against storage and we're against recycling. How do you get there?
So, you don't look for anything real to come out of that?
Oh, I'd love to see it. I hope that they'll learn. I hope they understand that we have to be independent of foreign oil. We have to cut down, if we can, on our coal consumption because it does cause greenhouse gas emissions, and nuclear power is the way to energy independence. I hope that they figure that out, and we want to work with them. And I don't want anybody listening to get the idea we don't want to work with them. We want to work with them, but we want to work with them as partners. We don't want policies dictated to us. And this whole healthcare debate has been a classic example of that.
The president is off now. He's just got on Air Force One a few minutes ago. He's going down to Tampa. While he's in Tampa, he's going to say that he wants to spend $8 billion to study building bullet trains all over the United States.
Billion here, billion there.
Yeah. Now, this is the $8 billion's just for the study.
Listen, I wish they would restrict his travel a little bit because every time he touches down, we're going to spend some more of the taxpayers' money.
Well, I have, you know what, all the years that I've been doing talk radio and all the times that you've been on the air with us and you go on the air everywhere else, does anybody ever call into the show and say, Senator, when are we going to build some bullet trains?
I know it's been an overwhelming tidal wave of requests for that. And look, you and I are from mass transportation. We're all for it, but we'd like to have it done by the private enterprise system, and we'd like to have it be profit making. So we're in a situation in America that. Oh, by the way, could I mention one other issue real quick?
Sure.
And that is the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Yeah, let's get into that for a minute. Nobody wanted him to go down this road last night.
Well, I'm not accusing anybody of political payoffs, but the fact is that the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy is worked. We have young Americans risking their lives in 2 wars. This is a policy that was designed by General Colin Powell with President Bill Clinton. It works. It is entirely satisfactory in my view. It may not be perfect, but to repeal it, without the examination of the policy, the ramifications of policy, I would rely on the views of many of our military leaders. We're the ones that give the responsibilities to. So I am unalterably opposed to a reversal of this policy, which I think is working. And this is no time for experimentation when we're in 2 wars.
Can I ask you to comment? I know you're on a tight schedule today, but before you get away from us, can you comment on the commercials that ran on KFYI and the other stations about J.D. Hayworth?
Well, I take every race seriously. I take every challenge seriously. I think we're all responsible for our records. We have been running ads, and we will continue to do so. I have a job to do, and that is to convince the people of Arizona that I have earned the right to continue and the honor to continue to represent them in the United States Senate. I've been working hard ever since my defeat, and the state is hurting, and they need all the help that I can give them, and assistance and service, and I intend to seek their approval again, and I will do that.
When are you coming back to town? Whatever it is, come on down and join us.
It's a real pleasure, and you're doing a great job, Barry and Michelle. It's always great to be on with you, and remember the words of Chairman Mao, who said, "It's always darkest before it's totally black."
John McCain.
Thank you, John.